Welcome to Southern Steep. Southern Steep is the public health and social justice podcast that centers the voices of community leaders in the Southern United States. Conversations highlight innovative approaches to unapologetic leadership, meaningful partnerships, and thriving communities. I'm Isaiah Webster, and I'm joined by Nicole Ellenoff. Hello, Nicole.
Hey, Isaiah. It's so good to be here.
You know, I finally got away from Torian and Bianca to do my first podcast with you, and I'm kind of excited and kind of nervous.
You know, I just feel like this is a big opportunity, and I'm a little nervous as well, being with the Isaiah Webster.
So I hope that I won't add extra nerves to you, because I feel like you have kind of developed this good rapport with Torian. And so my goal in this podcast is to dethrone him and take that positioning.
Oh, it started.
So if you're listening to this podcast, just a quick shout out to NASTAD. This podcast is brought to you by NASTAD, which is a nonprofit and nonpartisan public health organization in Washington, D.C. Nicole and I both work at NASTAD as a part of the prevention team, and you can learn more about NASTAD at nastad.org. That's NASTAD.org. Nicole, I'm really excited for today's guest because we both know him, and this is unique for the podcast that we've been recording thus far. And we kind of know him in, I think, different ways, and we can get into how you know him in just a sec. But first, I guess I can maybe introduce him.
Please do.
So Neil Rafferty is the director for BCHIP, which is the Birmingham Comprehensive High Impact Prevention at Birmingham AIDS Outreach, or BAO, in Birmingham, Alabama. He's also a member of the Alabama House of Representatives, specifically representing District 54. I met Neil, I think, was it last year or the year before? One of my colleagues and I went down to Birmingham in response to a technical assistance request that he had submitted, and NASTAD was able to kind of learn more about BAO and some of the work that Neil does. So Neil, did I get my timeline correct? And did I get your, who you are correct?
Yes, I think you did. So you came down to do the CBA. I think that was in 2019. That was definitely before COVID and everything. But yeah, you got everything right. I think we're on the right track here.
So welcome. So we're very happy to have you here. When I mentioned to Nicole in one of our production meetings that I thought you'd be an excellent person to have on, she lit up like a Christmas tree. She got very excited. And I was like, you know Neil? She's like, of course I know Neil. So I don't know who wants to answer this first. How do you all know each other?
So it was USCA before it was USCHA, I believe in 2017 in Washington, D.C. Or was it? We were at a conference. Was it the biomedical one in Los Angeles? No.
It wasn't Los Angeles. It was definitely D.C.
It was after, it was the AIDS United.
It might have been, was it 2018?
No, because that one was in Orlando. I think it was.
Gotcha.
So I remember meeting you at the AIDS United happy hour cocktail function for those that have been funded through them. And I was invited as a +1, and we got to talking, and then we ended up going out to dinner after. And this was right before you were officially the representative in Alabama. And I remember we talked about that. And just thinking about, you were getting really passionate about the South and about Birmingham. And I just remember it. I just remember it being a really fun evening. And it was a really good conversation. So when Isaiah mentioned your name, I'm like, we absolutely need to talk to him again.
Yeah, I think that's it. I do remember that night. That night was a good night. That when it bled over from that party into the next the hotel restaurant, sports bar restaurant, right?
Yeah.
It was at that same time.
So it's really interesting. I've only been working with Nicole since the spring, but I am always in awe of all of the movers and shakers she knows, particularly in the South. And so it's not surprising to me in the least that she knows people all over the Southern United States. That's really cool. So Neil, I wanted to start with a little bit about your personal background, particularly, I don't know if you know this or not, or if you remember, but I'm originally from Louisiana. And I feel like Southerners always have their own kind of story about their upbringing or their South, or kind of how the South defines them. And I don't know very much about if you're from Alabama or if you settled there. So can we just start with were you born and raised in Alabama, and what was that like?
Yeah, sure. I was born and raised here in Alabama, to a Roman Catholic family, and I grew up. I remember wanting nothing more than to get out of the South when I was growing up, but then realizing, just how awesome and beautiful this place can be, through its people, its culture, its history. As dark and problematic as it, perhaps it can be. I think that a beautiful thing about it is that we kind of take ownership of that here. I feel, in a way that, unlike other parts of the United States or the world do. This is, my home. I have lived here my whole life. I'm now 35 years old. So now I'm a 35-year-old Alabamian. Been here the whole time. So with a couple little excursions out there, but nothing big. This is always home.
So one of the things that I find really interesting about Alabama in particular is the imprint that it has on American history, particularly in the civil rights struggle. So there's Birmingham, there's Selma, there's all of these really kind of indelible moments that happened in Alabama. I wanted to know kind of what you thought about Alabama writ large, and like the story of the South and the story of our country.
Well, so I think William Faulkner said, to understand the world, you need to understand a place like Mississippi. And I think he meant, I think we could say something very similar to Alabama. The thing is that Alabama is an old place. It's been around for a long time and has a lot of different people here who all mesh together, conflict, grind against each other, all sorts of things. So I think understanding, particularly some of the defining issues of the day, you really do need to understand a place like Alabama. So,
and if you didn't live in Alabama, where else would you live?
I don't know. I mean, that's hard for me to know because, my family's here, my husband's family's here, everyone, my friends are here, all my network, a lot of my, my roots run deep in this state. But if I could live anywhere else, I don't know. Possibly, I don't know. I don't know, maybe, Texas or something. I don't know. Someplace still warm. I like warm.
You could ingratiate yourself to Nicole by saying Florida.
Oh, Florida. Yes. Well, Florida's a place where we go to visit. So.
And then you leave.
Not
gladly.
A place where I want to go live. Just kidding. I love all my Floridian friends out there. Y'all are gonna get me in trouble. That's what y'all are getting.
Well, we hope so. When I first met you, Neil, and I came down to Birmingham, I wasn't super clear about the difference between BAO and BCHIP and kind of
Sure.
like how the collaboration works. And so maybe we could just start there. If you could, for our listeners, kind of differentiate between the Birmingham AIDS Outreach and then the specific collaborative that you kind of direct.
Sure. So Birmingham AIDS Outreach is Birmingham's oldest ASO, or a service organization. It started in 1985. I think we've still been in the same building here that whole time. The city of Birmingham did donate or allow us to have this building rent-free as long as we were providing HIV prevention services. And we haven't stopped doing that since then. It was an AmeriCorps industry, AmeriCorps agency and that kind of thing as well. Let's see, now BAO has grown. So when I started here in 2012, I started here as a volunteer. It's grown from around, I think, 10 people to now an agency of that's over 54 people. I don't have the exact number on my head, but I know it's a much larger agency than it was when I first started here. Let's see. So BAO is its own, and BAO is incorporated. With that is the HIV prevention services testing. We provide client services, including assistance with medication, groceries, animal spay, neuter, and food there too. We have the Medic City Wellness Center, which is under the umbrella of BAO Inc., which is a LGBTQ friendly and affirming primary care facility. We also have the Magic City Acceptance Center, which is a center for LGBTQ people. Started out primarily focusing on youth and youth services, and it still largely is, but there are programs for adults and that kind of thing as well. And then we just got the Magic City Acceptance Academy, which will be a charter school for kids here that just started, but that is a very new ordeal, and I don't feel qualified to speak on that too much. So, because it is so new to the agency. BCHIP, right? That's the next question. That was the real question. BCHIP is Birmingham Comprehensive IMPACT Prevention. That is, so we are the lead agency with that, and what that does is lead agency. We have two contracted agencies with AIDS Alabama, as well as Alethea House here in Birmingham. And we provide a whole host of services for HIV prevention that's targeted towards the African-American community, particularly the MSM community and straight Black women. That collaborative has been made possible because there is a lot of, there's the HIV, Jefferson County HIV and AIDS Community Coalition here. So it brings all the stakeholders to the same table that might be operating here, and then it helps us support each other without replicating or services or duplicating services, and makes an efficient and effective way of spending money. Because anybody that works in nonprofit knows there's not tons of money out there. There's always a limited number of resources. So this is our way of working together while emphasizing our strengths, that kind of thing.
How many organizations are a part of BCHIP?
There are 3 that are officially part of BCHIP. That is us, East Alabama, and Alethea House. And
how do you keep the territorialism, the natural kind of competition between the organizations at bay? And I ask that because, in the work that Nicole and I do with CBOs in the South, part of the challenge of really successful collaborations is putting aside what is important to one and focusing on what might be important for the collective.
And I think that's exactly kind of the frame of mind we had when we were going into applying for the grant, was that, we can't all, we need to do this together. It would just make a more competitive thing. We would all be able to benefit from it because we'd all be able to hire staff and support programming that we might not have been able to do without that collaboration. And what we do is, you got to make sure that you're all talking to each other. So like I said, we do have the coalition, but there's also the HIV Prevention Network, which has more frontline staff who can all meet and work with each other. And we have an annual meeting where all these stakeholders get together to review some topics, some updates with HIV in the area. But then it's primarily a networking event, so that if my case manager here at BCHIP is new but doesn't necessarily know the linkage to care coordinator at the 1917 clinic, it's a great way for them to know each other, exchange numbers, so that they can provide a more effective navigation to the client and through the linkage to care process, as well as the linkage to services and other supportive and essential services. So I think what we do is we just keep on talking. We just make sure that we are on the same page with each other. for example, AIDS Alabama does a lot of housing. Okay, so they work a lot with housing. So BAO doesn't really hit on the housing issue too much because we already know AIDS Alabama is doing that. Alethea House does a lot of substance abuse work. So we hit on mental health. All three of them do, and there's certain capacities, but Alethea House is already kind of taking the lead and really is working on that substance abuse issue. So that's just one way that we make sure that we're not duplicating services, by supporting those agencies and doing those already, while getting that same support back in order to do the things that we're good at. So we do nutrition and food and a lot of stuff like that. We have a lot of funding for providing household goods, household cleaning items, that kind of stuff, as well as fresh meat, vegetables, dairy products, all sorts of stuff. And then a cooking class on top of that for them. So that's what we're doing. That's kind of what we can, one of our strong suits that we're able to contribute to that collaborative.
I think it's so incredible that you all are able to build this infrastructure where you're able to do more of those warm handoffs for linkage, because we know that when you know the person that you're linking them to and you're able to develop that relationship, it's more of a successful linkage. Instead of like, just go and talk to that person, I don't know anything about them. I think it's really great that you all have this formalized coalition. Isaiah was mentioning this to me, and I had no idea that you were working on this. And I think it's so great because the reality of fighting for funds is very real. And when you're able to collaborate on grants like this, you're more successful of an outcome. I remember back in 2015 in Central Florida, like there was such a slash of funds in this area because there wasn't that collaboration when going to apply for some of those funds, and it ended up hurting the area. So I guess, you're describing an example of like collaboration that's successful for the safety or the health of organizations and the better outcomes for the people y'all serving.
Absolutely. That's it 100%. I can say we're very fortunate to have that here. I cannot say that it's always perfect. Of course, there's certain tensions and stuff like that. You still have to navigate and be able to reconcile and that kind of thing. But like I said, it's just part of keeping up, keeping the communication open. I think making sure everybody's working together. And that they're part of a plan to tackle HIV epidemic in the whole area without running over each other, stepping on each other's feet, or anything like that.
So you mentioned ending the HIV epidemic, and I'm going to use this opportunity to pivot a little bit to,
Sure.
What we have been hearing nonstop about the EHE plan, and that's community engagement. And so my question for you mentioned the incredible drop-in space that's affirming for LGBTQ folks, but can you share a little bit about, successes that you all have had with reaching gay men? What's been successful, and then maybe some specific challenges?
So there's a couple of things that we make sure that we do in order so that the outreach is effective. For one thing, we do have a community advisory board that we do seek input and direction from. We also have we hire definitely do our best to hire from the community, make sure that we're supporting the community that way. We make sure that we are hosting. So, we've hosted a couple of large events. They've been buck battles or balls or mini balls or some sort of event like that can really reach out to that community. What I do is usually get somebody who already knows how to do that very well. I work out the details of the budget, help them out with that, and then say, all right, go forward. Because I don't know anything about throwing any of that stuff. I love going to them. I love working to them. But as far as how to throw it, how to get all the people there to do it and compete, that is not my expertise. So I think part of it's also understanding your own limitations where you are. Yes, I might be the director of the program, but I'm really here to to help support that staff and being able to throw those kinds of events. Not necessarily dictate what happens at those events, everything, just kind of give a framework, help out with the budget, and that kind of stuff, and then move out of the way.
So I have a follow-up question. You mentioned an event before you mentioned the balls.
Yes,
Buck battle. Can you explain? Can you unpack what that event is? Can you
Buck battle
that?
is a dance competition with dance teams specifically, and we get them from all over the state and sometimes the region too. I think last one we had people from Memphis as well as Atlanta here too. And what it is just a dance competition. There's different categories. You have captain against captain. You have team wide. You kind of have then you have like actual where you're just each team performs individually. Then they kind of feed off of each other's energy through a competition through that way. And that's really what it is. There's a lot of J-stepping. There's a lot of that kind of technique and dance move in there. But it's not just that. It's not exclusively that. It's always fun to see how creative people can get with that. Because I've seen somebody. I remember one person who was definitely classically trained dancer. Like you could tell they were classically trained the way they were. I mean, I don't even know what the moves are called, but throwing, like doing, I don't even know. I can't, I don't know what, but it looked like some ballet moves, but then also mixed in, but they were just well integrated into a more hip hop J-stepping routine. So it was great to see that.
So Neil, before Nicole asked you that question, you were talking about balls, and I thought your answer was very clear. But now I'm curious, if you were going to enter a ball, which category would you enter? And then I'll make another comment after you say that.
Oh shoot, I don't know. I have no idea. Like I don't even know how I don't know.
So
probably something. I don't know. I wish I could answer that for you.
So the reason obviously the listeners can't see this, but we're actually recording it and I can see Neil's face and you have like a full beard today. I don't know if you normally have a full beard, but Nicole, I was thinking that Neil could do like butch realness, maybe.
I definitely see butch realness. Absolutely. But also, yeah, butch realness.
That would be it. All right.
10,
I'll write that down.
10, 10.
I'll write that down. That's why I have my notebook out, Isaiah. It's just so I could write that down. Right.
Well, and also to write down the, Southern Steep podcast, you got to listen.
You got to listen. Well, I wrote down the Brewing Stronger community. I like that.
So these events, you were discussing them, that they have been successful.
They have been, yes. We get tremendous a good, they grow time after time, but you're going to have failures. You're going to have ones that, either you didn't market out, market right, but you have to learn from what you did the first time and then, adapt and make sure you have all those bases covered for the next time. But my experience with them is that they've just grown from year to year, event to event, with more participation and more enthusiasm that kind of surrounds it. I think a little people are pretty weary, and I get that there's a historical relationship there that can be a problem too, where they might not want to participate in an event that is sponsored by BCHIP and HIV testing and HIV and all that kind of HIV awareness. But once you kind of clear the way, build up those relationships and develop that trust, then they know it's real, that you're not just pulling a chain. It's not that we just want you to come in here to test you. We want you to come in here and enjoy yourself. Even if you don't get tested, just come in and enjoy yourself. And then if you want to get tested down the road, then we're open to that. But you'll have the information for that if you decide when it's ready for you. So
one of the earliest lessons that I learned when coming into the HIV work is that you really need to develop a relationship before the public health can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes organizations are so quick to just hitting the numbers that they're not really looking at people as people and developing that relationship. You mentioned you mentioned stigma as a challenge, but being in a rural area in a rural region, what are some other challenges that you all have experienced when engaging the LGBTQ plus community, just in general?
Well, so I think I have a couple of thoughts about that. I mean, the first one is that I operate largely in the metro area here in Birmingham, but we've done lots of work in rural areas, and I think it's important, particularly with stigma, is you got to realize there's a time to do the education bit and try to address stigma directly and try to eliminate it. And there's a certain, but there's also a time to circumvent it and try to meet people where they are in their particular social situation, and just make sure that you're providing the best services possible. I think that's kind of an art for people that in our position to kind of figure out how to dance with those two goals and realize which one's more important at any given moment. I'll say for one thing, I used to do outreach testing in the Black Belt, which is a very rural part of Alabama. It's one of the poorest parts of the country. And I went down there with an already very well established mobile testing clinic that's run out of a church here with Dr. Sandra Ford, who's amazing, by the way. But I asked her if she would be okay with me coming down there and providing HIV testing, and she said, "Sure, come on." Sure, whatever. I remember the first time we did it, we set up our testing table along with all the other stuff. So, and as people were going through, you went to, your nutrition counselor person, you could go to a dentist, all this other stuff. It was all kind of open air. And we were at the very end, and we noticed that as soon as people got to us, it was done. Like, we just turn around and leave. There was no more working. They got everything that they thought that they needed, and they didn't even want to be seen possibly talking to us. Well, this is pretty easily dealt with, because all I did was just, talk to Dr. Ford. I was like, okay, so I think we have an issue here with people participating or what's the word I'm looking for? Or just, taking advantage of this service that's provided here and that's needed. And she said, okay, well, what would you like to do? I was like, well, you do have this extra little mobile room in your clinic. Do you use that for anything? She's like, no. So what we ended up doing was setting up where she would do a kind of an initial screening almost, and then she would just tell them to go see us in across the or down the mobile testing clinic or the mobile exam room that she had. And from there, then nobody had to be seen doing it. Nobody knew what was going on. They just knew that some people were going in this room, some people weren't. And we were able to provide, and then you get a much more frank, honest conversation with the client, which is definitely more, makes it, that information they're providing you enables you to be able to have a conversation that's more pertinent to them and their situation and what they're going through and what their concerns are. And it's surprising, because the first time we went down there, we only had maybe 2 tests. The next time we went, it was closer to 50, because of this new system that we were working through with the help and assistance of Dr. Ford. So,
thank you for sharing that, and just shows how you're able to adjust and be flexible to meet the needs of the community.
You have to be, particularly in this line of work particularly with HIV. I mean, I think lots of different diseases have different stigmas attached to them, but I don't think anything quite like HIV that I can think of, where all of a sudden people start assuming your what's going on with gender, what's going on with your sexuality, what's going on with your relationship with Jesus Christ. I mean, there's all sorts of things people start throwing in there when they think that you have anything to be worried about with HIV. So there's a lot of people that have to be worried about that.
So Neil, I've been doing this work in HIV now for almost 20 years, and I've met quite a few cis, white, gay men, and they're doing amazing work. But I only met you once, but you came across to me as someone who is very much aware of his privilege, and you seem to um, take a step back in spaces and allow other people to kind of their voices and their presence to come forward. I'm wondering where that came from. Is that something that you do consciously? Because it certainly was evident to me.
So there's definitely a kind of intentionality with it for sure. I would say for me, it took, somebody that's grown up in the South once again, and it takes a lot of work. It took a lot of me really trying to understand where other people were coming from. If I'm going to go back all the way and try to show my kind of, if you will say, like evolution, for lack of a better word, or to, I guess Barack Obama said that too. Okay, so I guess where it just took a lot of educating myself, took a lot of reading, took a lot of my friends who were willing to have those conversations with me, where I could, even explain. So I don't really understand what people mean by this. But then it's also the fact that I think just being gay growing up down here gives you kind of an expanded empathy in a way, where, yes, I am white and I am a male, but, I had to deal with being, openly gay at a very young age. I came out when I was 13 years old. And when I came out, I remember being ostracized and put aside, and all of a sudden people were starting to put their stuff on me, or kind of what they thought about this on me. And I remember thinking that was probably where my expanded empathy came from, and particularly for other marginalized people. So then, moving on from there, it was understanding that, it was just a lot of listening. I mean, that's really what I can say. I have really great friends who are Black, who have discussed, the predicament with me. But it just took me kind of, and I'm somebody that, if I come into a conversation and I have some ideas about how it goes, and then, but I get enough evidence and a good argument that makes me rethink where I was coming from initially, I'm going to listen to that, take it, and then that's going to reframe how I think about this issue in the future. And I think I have to say that I have a lot of great friends. I also went to a university here in Birmingham at UAB, and took a lot of politics and African politics and African American politics and African American classes here. So I had a lot, pretty robust kind of academic understanding of those issues too, in a way that I wouldn't have had I not gone to school and not done those classes here at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, which is a very diverse school. And it's not just diverse, it's diverse like everyone hangs out too. It's not just diverse but segregated, it's diverse and very, I've just never been anywhere else that's quite like it.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. My experience in this work has come full circle, because when I first started, it was all about making sure that our spaces were as diverse as they could be, and to make sure that the carrier of certain messages had, some sort of relationship with the community that they were trying to reach. And so in my case, I'm a Black gay man from Louisiana. And so I was, considered to be the perfect messenger for that particular community. And in the last year, one of the things that I've just kind of realized in my own, personal life is that, if we really want to deconstruct white supremacy, just to use one example, then it's really incumbent upon white people to do that. That's not really the work of people of color. And I think you can take that same example and apply it to other things. And I feel like, at least in my limited kind of experience with you, you seem to kind of get that, okay, I'm navigating these spaces where a lot of the work may or may not necessarily apply to me, but that, I have a role to play here. And I think that is so important. And I don't think that it's an insignificant thing. Like, I think that Nicole and I and you might, that empathetic and being and showing empathy to others is probably something that we do a lot, but I feel like it's not talked about enough.
I mean, yeah, I could see that.
I wanted to, Nicole, looks like you want to say something.
I mean, I was just going to say that empathy and compassion are definitely not topics that are discussed much these days, but they are just so important and really such a center to the work that we're doing.
I could not agree more. So, Neil, we did want to talk to you a little bit about public service and public health because you're the perfect person to talk about this. And when I was reading up on you for this podcast, I discovered that you were in the military. You were in the Marine Corps. And I wanted to know just a little bit about how that shaped kind of like your decision to go into to seek public office and your decision to kind of commit so much of your career to public health.
Well, so there's a couple things. I think particularly with public health and they all kind of come together. The whole thing is that everything comes together here with public health when I'm trying to address systemic and structural barriers to my clients and keep noticing that they keep having roadblocks and obstacles that are kind of thrown in their way. And for me, part of what I said when I was running for office was that Marines don't leave anyone behind. Like, we can have progress. Alabama has had before COVID a record low unemployment, but our poverty rate was still, relatively stagnant, plateaued, hadn't moved much. So we knew that something wasn't quite right there. And I also knew in my immediate vicinity here in Birmingham that there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of people who with untreated mental health issues, a lot of homelessness, and a lot of people with untreated substance abuse issues. So part of why I wanted to run and part of where the Marine Corps came in was definitely that, don't want to leave anyone behind. Now, conversely, I would say that the Marine Corps is a very conservative institution. And it is an institution where I had to navigate and be in the closet at the same time under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, even though I was in a relationship with another Marine at this time too. Long story there. But the thing is that I, had to learn and get along with people who did not think like me. I was a big old liberal, and I was unapologetic. And I would talk about my liberal point of view on certain things. And, it would sometimes solicit a strong reaction back. Sometimes it would solicit let's talk about this more. But the whole idea was that I also got in a situation where I can understand conservative people a little bit better. Some of those folks I might not have much of a relationship with. Or much in common with when it comes to, how we see the role of government and that kind of thing. But it allowed me the opportunity to be able to live with, know, and appreciate these people on their own terms, even if I thought they were dead wrong. It was still that, well, I still have to live with you. I still have to work with you. And you're my brother or my sister, and I'm still going to love you. It doesn't matter. So that was some important lessons that I brought from the Marine Corps from there. And then, of course, is everything like, leadership, setting the example, not asking anybody to do anything you wouldn't yourself be willing to do. I remember this one time I was helping during the campaign. We had to put up all these big signs, and we could, I hired somebody to construct them, while they worked. But then I went out there and met them and then helped them put it up. And they were like, well, what's your name? I was like, Neil. Neil. He was like, Neil Rafferty. That's my name right there. I called the phone. They're like, wait, the candidates out here help these things up. Like, well, yeah, man. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. I was super busy. I didn't put them all up, but, I wanted to be out there and put some of them up, at least to see how it was. If I saw one that was down or whatever, I knew how to put it back up and all that kind of stuff too. So, I mean, there's a lot of other reasons why you're doing it, but the main one was to show that, no, I'm not afraid to come out here with you and work with you and get my hands dirty with you and do the same work. So,
And you're in your first term, correct?
I am, yes. In Alabama, we have 4-year terms. So
4-year terms?
4-year terms for the whole state government.
And what do we need to know about District 54? Not Studio 54, District 54.
Well, it's funny. That will probably be one of my. It'll probably be a campaign party that was discussed about, like a fundraiser, calling it Studio 54. So, but no. So this district is largely. Most districts are spread out among different municipalities, different counties. We have, some of my rural colleagues represent 5 or 6 different counties themselves because they're just so spread out. But here, I probably have one of the most densely populated districts in the state. My district is largely just Birmingham and Birmingham proper. There's a little bit of a suburb really close to us called Irondale, and I have a little bit of that area too. But District 54 is very diverse. It has a lot of people from all over here. It's a majority minority district, so it's about 60 to 65% African American or Black. It has a large population of Democrats, of white and Black Democrats that live here. Or white, Black progressives, and people that and it has some of the wealthiest areas in the Birmingham area. It has some of the poorest areas in the Birmingham. So it's very interesting with that. The good thing is that largely a lot of the rich people in my district are like, yes, fight for them. They're the ones that really need it. It's that kind of attitude we have here in District 54. A kind of solidarity almost. There is a large LGBTQ population that calls this place home, calls District 54 home. And let's say there's also a lot of medical professionals. So we have a lot of people, a lot of teachers, a lot of medical professionals, and then I think we have the most nonprofit employees or nonprofit directors per capita of any other district in the state too. So we have a lot of socially, environmentally, economically conscious people that live in this district, which is why it's a true honor to represent it, because I can just be, as some people have to tiptoe around some of the progressive issues, and I don't have to tiptoe around nothing in this district.
The way that you're painting Birmingham, not when you were talking about UAB, I was thinking how you could be, an ad for UAB. And then you talking about District 54 is just, it's really incredible. And you really do paint it in such a beautiful way. So I'm glad that you're that district's representative, because that's who, I'd want for a representative.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad to do it too.
You have mentioned this a little bit in our conversation so far, but I have a couple of questions. And the first one is, what do you love about the South? You've touched on some things about the South, but what do you love about the South?
I love our people and our rich use of language. I think that, once again, I have an English degree, so pardon me, but I just think that we have a very colorful storytelling tradition down here that does not exist elsewhere in the country. I think it's just very unique. When you study literature and American literature, there's often American literature, but then there is Southern literature, which is kind of its whole own animal in and of itself. And I think that, that literature really tries to capture the spirit of the people down here and all the different kind of folks that call this place home and have called it home for a long time. But there's, tremendous hospitality. There is a mutual respect. There is delicious food. There is, and just some of the best people you'll ever meet in your life that call this place home. And, it's not perfect. I mean, it's not even close. We certainly have a lot to work on. But I think that it's definitely worth fighting for, and it's definitely worth doing that work on.
So you already knew what my follow-up question would be, and that is what do you want to see for the South?
I want to see a South that realizes its own potential and that does not get bogged down in the history, but, kind of, like I said, owns it. And then, is leading the way, leading the country in how to have that reconcile of that question of the question of race. I think, was it W.B. Du Bois that said that this would be the most, race would be the most prominent question or prominent issue of the 20th century? Or was that? Maybe I'm making that up, but you know what I'm talking about.
It's a good quote.
It's a good quote, right? But here we are in the 21st century, and I think we're still seeing that conversation finally take front stage and center. And I think that that's really important as well. And I think that the South can and hopefully will someday lead the way in that conversation and those changes.
Neil, thank you so much for not only, sharing your truth about what you love about the South, but what you want to see for the South, and just really being such a joy to speak to today. We really appreciate you coming and speaking with us on the Southern Steep.
My pleasure. Thank y'all. Thanks for having me. Absolutely. Good to see everyone again, Nicole and Isaiah. Absolutely.
So good to see you.
Hopefully we'll get to see each other sooner than later.
I need to come to Birmingham.
Come on down. We'll take you.
Yeah, I'm gonna come post the COVID, but I'm excited to see you in Birmingham. It'll be beautiful.
Hopefully. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Good to see you, Neil. Thanks so much for being here.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
We appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. So for this episode's edition of Southern Charm, I wanted to highlight the Southern AIDS Coalition, also known as SAC. The mission of the Southern AIDS Coalition is to end the HIV epidemic and other health disparities in the South. SAC is a nonpartisan coalition of government, community, and business organizations and leaders working to prevent new HIV transmissions and build a healthier South for people living with HIV and those at high risk for HIV transmission. SAC does this work through public health advocacy, capacity building assistance and education, leadership development, and resiliency building for people living with HIV and AIDS. The organization also works to accomplish its mission through research and evaluation, addressing stigma, and through strategic grant making. So, Nicole, I really wanted to highlight SAC because, they are a close partner with NASDAD. And we've been working with them for many years on our capacity building assistance project. And so a lot of the work that we're doing, whether it be on condom distribution, whether it be on gay men's health equity, they have been true partners in that work. But also the organization is really focusing here in the last few months on building stronger relationships with health departments. And their new director of health department initiatives, is Darnell Barrington. And he is a alumni for NASDAD's Minority Leadership Program, or MLP. And so as one of the facilitators of MLP, I got to know Darnell really well. I was really excited that he got hired on at SAC. They're a great organization. They are headquartered in Birmingham. And I thought, we're going to have Neil on to talk about BAO. And so it just made sense to kind of highlight the Southern AIDS Coalition as well as a really true Southern charm.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that they're based out of Birmingham, because when you shared that that SAC was going to be our Southern charm, I just thought how perfect. We're talking to Neil in Birmingham, and we've got SAC from Birmingham. But I mean, we know that they have such a large impact across the South, not just in Birmingham.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, that would be the point that we want to make is that, SAC works across the entire Southern region, and they're doing, amazing work in response to COVID-19, in response to PrEP and so many other things. And so that's absolutely true. And for folks that want to learn more about them, their website is southernaidscoalition.org. That's southernaidscoalition.org. So you can learn more about SAC and their partnership with NASDAD. So Nicole, we've reached the end of our first episode together. Like we recorded with the other hosts. How did you feel about it?
Well, this has been the longest podcast I've recorded to date. And so I'm thinking it really has to do with the Isaiah Nicole factor. It's been a good time.
But did it feel long to you? Like I felt like, I could see, obviously I have the clock right in front of me. I can see that we went nearly just maybe an hour or right about an hour now, but I felt like the conversation was good.
It wasn't forced. I think it went well.
I think it went well too.
I would host again with you.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Do you really have a choice?
There's always a choice, but no, I'm gladly choosing this one.
All right. Well, we hope that all of you listeners enjoyed and that you will continue to listen to our ramblings on Southern Steep. I'm Isaiah Webster.
I'm Nicole Elenoff.
Thanks for listening.